COVID-19 is something that is probably going to happen only once in our lifetime. It is certainly unprecedented. Believe it or not, so is our government's response. The CARES Act is one such response, and from the CARES Act is something called the Paycheck Protection Program. Now, those of you who have been watching the news know that the money, the funding has run out from the $349 billion first tranche of budget for the Paycheck Protection Act. Now, that is all hope is not lost. So it's important to know that there is apparently discussion of another $310 billion for the second tranche of funding for the Paycheck Protection Act. I am interviewing Dru Jaeger, the Area Vice President for Commercial Lending at Unison Bank. This is one of my personal banks that I use for my business and personally. So I want to hear about the lender's perspective when it comes to funding and processing these loans. So I thank Dru for coming on the program today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay, from the bank's perspective, let's briefly cover the Paycheck Protection Program. It's a fund that is guaranteed by a loan that is covered or guaranteed by the government, and the government simply is using the banks, the existing infrastructure, to get these loans out to as many people as possible. And it was a first come, first serve type of a situation. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And how does Unison Bank prepare? I know it's been talked about for several weeks. And how did you guys prepare, and what ended up happening?
Before they actually opened up the website to start putting the applications in, executive management within the bank spent just hours and hours on webinars, phone calls, local SBA offices. The funny part is you could call 3 different states SBA offices, ask the same question, you'll get 3 different answers. The guidance that we had from the very beginning, even on the webinars, the questions we would ask weren't being answered. Essentially what they said was, you as the executive management team within the bank, you come up with your own plan. How are you going to gather the information? What information do you want? How are you going to prove the payroll? How are you going to get it approved? And so we had to actually come up with a policy, because if you don't understand a bank, everything we do in a bank has a policy and it has to be followed to the letter. So once the executive management sets that policy on what we were doing, all the officers that are doing the processing of the applications, we had to follow them to the letter of the law. It became very frustrating through that process of people that might have been calling saying, hey, we're not getting help from our bank. Are you willing to help? And we said, yep, we got to help our customers first. But then once we started doing those, people started becoming angry, saying, well, that's not what I was told. My friend, did it at their bank and they did it this way. And the answer was, we had our policy set. That's the way we had to do it. If you don't want, it became very, very frustrating on that first go round, because nobody knew exactly what they were doing, because we weren't even allowed to get them into the SBA queue at that point. We were just gathering information.
So just for the layman who is not in banking, for people like me, it basically, you took in applications from consumers like me, and then you have to enter that information into the SBA queue, and then you have 10 days to fund it, right? After they approve it, you have 10 days to fund it.
Right. We'd spend about 6-7 days gathering all the information, the application that you had filled out, and you gave us the payroll, you gave us the narrative letter stating how this has affected your business. Our process was to prove that was your payroll, make sure your calculations were correct. The equation of your 12 months payroll divided by 12 multiplied by 2.5, make sure those numbers were correct. And all the day that Friday morning that they said, hey, we're going to open up that website, obviously East Coast being ahead of us 3 hours at the time, they opened up at 6 o'clock in the morning their time. We get here at 8 o'clock in the morning our time, and we're trying to get on there. Our first application that day did not go through until 4:30 in the afternoon. That was the
Wow.
first one we got pushed through the SBA website. Not knocking the website, but it was almost, back in the day, when we first switched over to Windows from DOS. That's literally what the website almost looked like when you first looked at it. You're just like, oh, good Lord, I cannot, you're trying to tab through, like, we're so used to, being able to tab through and easily go through these. And, it's one of those, nope, you put in a wrong number, a decimal in the wrong place, immediate error. There
It
was
crashed.
just,
Like it literally crashed.
it crashed. It crashed nonstop. We have a loan officer here, and he's really, really good with computers. So unfortunately, he got stuck being the one sitting there that first day, just hitting the return button on submit, submit, submit. And at 4:30 that afternoon, we finally got one through. We couldn't believe it. And so then at that point, it actually shows, it kicks out a sheet that you can print out, a submission sheet. And at that point meant that, hey, you just got put into the SBA's queue. Okay. And it gives a number. Once that happened, then we had 10 days to get it funded. So that started that first day, that Friday at 4:30 in the afternoon.
Wow.
And so we had customers like you that, are great customers. And we're like, hey, we've got to get it in, because everybody was in a full-fledged panic of, how fast is $349 billion going to run out? And so all the loan officers, we just said, you know what, hey, let's come in on Saturday morning. We have to work on Saturday to get these guys into the queue. So that's what we did. We came in Saturday morning, pushed these through as quick as we could. And it was actually kind of helpful that Saturday to do that, because there was I don't know if there was a lot of banks that just didn't work that Saturday, because we got a lot of them through. So that was helpful.
I think the proactive banks, I've heard. I actually had a conference call this morning with my IT people in Texas, and they put their application through, and they said they were contacted similarly on April, I believe, the 4th, which is a Saturday, and their bank got their application through. So I think the banks that were working on Saturdays, that critical Saturday, got the money through and got their clients' loans funded.
Right. Now, if I just kind of interject a little bit as far as, this being the payroll / Paycheck Protection Act, a lot of the frustration that started occurring with ownerships of businesses, whether it was might be an S Corp or a C Corp or an LLC, the word that everybody needed to focus on through this process was payroll. This is based on payroll. This was not based on, protection for the owner or protection for the business. This whole program is just based on the employee and who's on your payroll tab or on your actual payroll. And so the frustration became for a lot of owners who have an LLC that get paid through a K-1 at the end of the year, or they do draws. It doesn't show up on a payroll, so they couldn't calculate that in. And so that became a huge frustration for a lot of the borrowers. And
I think a lot of people just simply never read the actual fine print or
Correct.
even the summary of the program. If you read that, but you can't really blame the consumers, because they were changing the rules even up until the last minute. The interest rate changed, the repayment period changed. So I couldn't even imagine if it was that confusing for the end consumer like me. I couldn't even imagine what it was like for you to have to take in the applications, submit the applications, and process the loans.
Yeah, it was nonstop reading. The emails were just flooding in, constantly going to the websites, just trying to, find anything that had been updated. Because I had so many customers that were calling me and, or sending me emails, with links to like CPAs, or anybody who was blogging anything saying, well, no, this qualifies. And so then I'd go do all my research. And I'm like, it's not qualifying. Our executive management would go look and it wasn't qualifying. All of a sudden we had, 1099s, miscellaneous income. And there was a lot of people that had those and that they could qualify, but they had to have a Schedule C. And the argument that everybody was having at that point was on the Schedule C, we had to use the net income. And a lot of people that, are paid through 1099 independent contractors, that's a gross number. And then all of a sudden they run that through their Schedule C and they write everything off except, the kitchen sink because they don't want to pay the taxes. And all of a sudden we have to use that net number for 2019 income. And so that's not a very big number when it came down to it. But that was the rules that the SBA and the Treasury set for those. The problem became that actually got opened up the following Friday. The SBA website got opened up for Schedule C, 1099 independent contractors. I had 5 of those who were very, very good customers of mine. And it was very frustrating because, as it turns out, I didn't get any of them into the first batch of money. Any of those Schedule C guys, I did not get through because the SBA website would only take an EIN number. It wasn't taking a Social Security number. So we had multiple phone calls in, emails in, asking for help. How do we get our guys through? And all of a sudden, whatever the day that was, Thursday morning or whatever time, all of a sudden we get notice going, yep, money just ran out and the website went away. We couldn't even log in anymore. And so now I'm sitting here, trying to figure out if they get this funded in here this week, how do I get my Schedule C guys to get their money out of this second tranche first? But we still haven't got the answer from the SBA why the website wasn't taking the Social Security number. So I haven't talked to anybody else that got a whole lot of Schedule C 1099 miscellaneous income contractors through that program the first time.
Yeah, I think that was initially they started taking applications for, I think just like you said, the companies that have EINs. And then it was about a week or 10 days later, then they started accepting applications for self-employed and 1099 type folks. It was confusing. Anything coming from the government. First of all, I will have to give them credit for, I've always bashed the government. There's government efficiencies and oxymoron, kind of like military intelligence, right? I have to give them credit on being able to put through a program so quickly and then leverage the existing infrastructure to get the loans out. I mean, $349 billion was spent, and a lot of people received their loans. They were funded, and I was one of those beneficiaries. So I really can't bitch too much. I'm just impressed that you are able to get all that processing through. Do you have an estimate of how many loans that you guys were able to get through this time around?
Unlike JP Morgan, we're not going to brag about what we did. We helped a lot of people.
Very good.
We're very proud of what we did. Our customers are very proud. I wrote a lot of thank you notes hanging on the wall of people that were horribly frustrated. And these are clients that are really, really good clients that were horribly frustrated and screaming at me on the phone, saying you're not doing this quick enough. You're not doing this quick enough. And we were going as fast as we could. Because we only have 3 commercial loan officers here because we're a community bank.
Correct.
And it's everything that we do is personally driven, and we get to know our customers. And unfortunately, they have my cell phone number because that's how it works in a community bank.
Yeah.
And so that weekend, they're calling me on Saturday, calling me on Sunday. Hey, we get this done. Did we get this done? And it's like, calm down. Everything's going to be fine. 349 billion's a lot of money.
But there were also a lot of applicants, so that money ran out quickly. I knew it would. 349. You thought, oh man, that's a lot of money. But I knew the number of people. You just look at the unemployment numbers that is just climbing like crazy, and I think about the employers and the payroll, 2.5x the average monthly payroll for the last average from the last year, 2019. I knew that wasn't going to last. You start throwing it. These are companies with fewer than 500 employees. Still, that's a lot of money. So, and there are a lot of companies out there, right? So I knew that was going to run out. And I did, just for the record, I did not call you on a weekend to apply for this loan.
No, you did not. You did not. There was an article, I'll email it to you. It came out yesterday about the positives, the negatives of the first go round of money. And unfortunately, like I said, in the article, JP Morgan is bragging, essentially, they 80% of all that money was to their customers. The problem is these are very, very large loans that were going out. We're talking, $10 million going out in different things to different companies. And one of them happened to be Shake Shack.
Oh yeah, they're returning their money from what I hear.
Yeah.
So let me emphasize this. My relationship with Unison Bank started when I arrived at your doors before the bank was officially open. And your manager, Brenda, opened the door to let me in, and that led to our relationship. So that was really good. I mean, the personal touch. And I've always advocated for the small businesses, for all the consulting, the free consulting that I do for my urology colleagues and physician colleagues and stuff like that. I've always advocated for private practice. And what Brenda did and what you are doing, what you did for our practice, I mean, that is exemplary. That is a perfect demonstration of how relationship banking works. I have heard so many of my colleagues bitch and complain about how they did not get their loans through when they work with Wells, B of A, and Chase. Now, I've heard this is a recurrent thing that I keep hearing from all my physician colleagues at different forums. Now, some of them were funded, but a lot of them were very disappointed when working with larger banks. So I have to say that relationship banking is definitely the way to go. And I've always worked. My current 2 banks that I use are relationship small banks in the community.
Right.
So tell me about, I know you guys, the banks don't do this for free. Tell me about how are you incentivized by the government to process these loans?
Technically, we're not. There's nothing really. When it's all said and done, we're technically going to lose money on doing these deals, but they're 100% guaranteed. Apparently, we hope they are. There better not be any loss on these, because that would be even worse. So when it's all said and done, at 100, being 100% guaranteed, your note was set up at 1%. I mean, that's what the yield is on it. So, but by the time that it takes for the loan officer to put together what I had to do, get that to my processor, they had to do their paperwork, get it out to you. You had to get it signed. You had to come back. We have to process it. It has to be uploaded into the system. We have to make sure all of that is correct. Our compliance is correct. All the signatures are there. It just keeps going on and on and on down the line to finally get scanned, to get put in the system. When you look at the actual man hours that are put into one application for a 1% yield, there's no income being made on this. My focus, for this bank to make money needs to be on actual commercial loans. And, where you're making, right now in the current rate environment, about 4.5%. That's, where you actually start, can make money for the bank. So the reason that we ended up doing these, number one, is to help our customers. And I think that was the frustration that a lot of those that at Wells, Chase, and whatever, the reason I was getting the phone calls is because they knew somebody like you that had said, hey, my bank did this. And it went flawless. And, we flew right through and everything was great. And so I started getting those phone calls, and I said, and they were frustrated. And I said, well, I have to help my customers in the bank here first. And in doing so, we ended up, getting some new customers, because we did have some time at the end to get those in. But the caveat that goes with that, and especially this second time around, currently taking applications for when they do open it back up, the caveat is the relationship that you're going to have, your business account needs to be with this bank. If we're going to have a relationship and we're helping you out, don't stay with the big banks. They did nothing to help you when it really came down to it. I helped you. So we need your deposits in a community bank. The big banks, they don't care. Unless you have really at a minimum $500,000 on deposit with them, they don't care. we like the relationships, because when it really comes down to it, if we have your business account, and even if you're only running through, 10, 20, $30,000 a year, small business, if it's going through a month, that small amount, it doesn't matter. It's a deposit relationship. But if I can, help set up, a line of credit, on accounts receivable, or if you're looking to buy a new building, and we can do the commercial real estate loan, that's why we're willing to work with those, because hey, hopefully somewhere down the road we build that relationship and that connection through that person. If ends up being a good relationship with them, then they're going to tell, hey, this community bank down on the corner, yeah, they may only have one location, but they can do everything the big banks do. We don't have to run there. If we want to do remote deposits, they set it up with everything that we need. We can bank with them, even with one location.
Well, you covered you covered so much there. First of all, remote deposit, electronic access to funds, electronic deposits. Like I said, I've had both personal and business accounts with you guys, and you're one of the two local banks that I use. And the personal relationship is definitely there. I mean, the pre-COVID, when I used to walk into the bank, and I already told you guys I hate going to the bank, right? I want to be able to electronically deposit the funds, but it's that relationship, knowing you, how we were at the initial, what is a networking thing that we started, right? Even though I haven't been able to attend, but that was getting to know people and having a face to a name and a phone number. And that's how all this developed. Now, for the folks who missed out on the first tranche, and while the government is still dicking around with the next tranche of $310 billion, what can businesses do now with their bank or with Unison Bank? Say I didn't get the money from the Paycheck Protection Program. What can I do? What programs do you offer now?
Well, I mean, it's still going to be the same program. The people that are reaching out to me right now, I'm just shooting them an email, and it's pretty just brutally honest. Here's the information that I need, number one, and you can testify that it really wasn't that hard putting the application together, getting the payroll together, doing the narrative letter. It's actually fairly simple.
Well, I will tell you what really saved me are a couple of three things. Number one is I have an awesome office manager, and she took care of everything after I gave her the link and information. Number two, we use a payroll service, ADP. They had a link,
which was awesome.
Yeah, they had a link that was comprehensive.
Yes,
everything that we needed. So she started gathering that information, and then on April 6th, Monday we made the initial submission, and then on Tuesday we found out because you told us that the forms changed. So I had to resubmit with a new form, with a new signature. And then within 7 days, you told me that the loan was funded. And then on April 15th, I saw the money actually in the account. So that was incredibly fast. And like I said, as much as I bash the government, I have to give them credit. I have to give you guys credit for working so quickly, even on a Saturday. I mean, I can't believe that you said you guys came in on a Saturday, because bankers, as you guys, as we all know, don't work on weekends.
That's why I took the job. But yeah, if we go back to the process, once this comes back around, because I'm getting enough applications that are going again, because pretty much most of my customers, we've taken care of our customers, and you only get one bite at this apple. So, and what I'm really hoping doesn't happen, and the government, they better not do it, is make, major changes, because of pressure from a lobbyist group or something that says, okay, well, the first time around, we missed this, and they open it up to, a different element like an LLC, for people that they wouldn't allow them to put because they weren't on payroll. I don't want them to be able to do that this second time around, because you can't come back and do another application this second time under the same company name. They're not going to allow that to happen. So hopefully, we know the rules now. We stick to the rules, and let's move forward this second time. It'll be a little bit easier, just because, we've been through the full gamut of the gathering, the, getting everything approved, doing the submissions, doing the paperwork, getting them funded. And so now we've been through that, the hell of that one time. So this time around will be a little bit different. And then, I'm meeting a whole lot of new people, which is great. They're calling up saying, hey, so-and-so told me you helped them. This is where we're at. I'm not getting any help. Are you willing to help? Sure. Here's the information, but I'm not going to do the work. You have to do the work. You provide your payroll. I don't want to have to sit here on my calculator and make sure your numbers are correct. The best part about your deal through ADP, I'm not promoting ADP, but I will tell you by far that was a phenomenal program that they had, because it just kicked it out. The worksheet that we provide, where you have to put down your employees, the totals, their stuff was just totaled perfectly. All I had to do was check it off, make sure the application was signed, all the boxes were filled in, take it down, have executive management look through, make sure I had, all my information correct, signed off, approved, and it was ready to go into the SBA queue. But what I'm telling people this second time around is, I'm still not going to do the work for you. I've got so many of these that are already going, and I know I'm going to get more phone calls, and that's fine. We will do that, but you're going to do the work. If you're going to argue with me about something or whatnot, it's going to stop. I'm not going to, I'm not dealing with that this time. You do the work, you give me what I need, and I will help get you through and help get you your money. But
well, that's the typical loan process anyway. I mean, I have to provide the information that is required by the lender to satisfy your criteria, which that is kind of handed down by the government, and then you guys go through your process, and that's how I get funded. I mean, that's just like traditional loan. So you're not making me do any additional work other than what I should have been doing in the first place. And I get it. A lot of people are entitled. They want you to do everything. You access my account. You figure out the total. You multiply this, and you do all that. Yes, a lot of credit to ADP for giving us all the forms, the documents, and the payroll information, because we run payroll through them. And they made it a lot easier. And by the time we submitted the application to you, apparently everything was perfect. And I just needed to re-sign because the form changed per the government.
Right. So, and just so anybody that reaches out to me, for the second go around, I just want them to know that if they're not current customers of the bank, we're going to be willing to help, but it doesn't mean that we're going to do that. We are going to ask that your business relationship comes to Unison Bank.
That's perfectly understandable. My question is, you've had success with relationship clients like me. How do you, with physical distancing and things like that, can someone even open an account? Because I know I couldn't even walk into the branch.
Just like you on your loan documents that you did for the PPP program, you signed it. We funded it off of the electronic signature, and then you mailed in or dropped off through the drive-through the originals. Okay, that's how that worked. The same thing is happening on the deposit side for the checking accounts, or whether a money market account or whatnot. Someone can still
open an account.
Yep. So we get that opened up, but like I said, the timeline of how these go down, for once the company has their information, they fill out the application, they give me the payroll, they give me the narrative. Once I have all of that back, and once it gets approved, that does not mean that it's in the SBA queue, okay? Which isn't even open yet. Well, I'm assuming, my guess is if they get the money in there, it'll probably be Thursday. If they open it up, it'll be Friday. I'm not working Saturday this week. I'm taking this Saturday off. But so hopefully they'll get that opened up on Friday. And if they do, what I'm telling people is, if I'm willing to do this for you and you're not a customer, we want that business relationship, but I'm not going to put you into the SBA queue until that checking account is set up. And because I don't care if you're at Wells or Chase or whatever, you're mad at them. Stay mad at them. Don't go back to them. It's not worth 1% on a loan to stay with someone that's going to be frustrated. The community bank is still going to be a community bank. It's relationship driven. So before I put you into that SBA queue and commit Unison Bank and giving you your PPP loan, I want your money in this bank. I want your business account in this bank. So when we actually get it in the queue, we fund it. It deposits into this account, because essentially when it's all said and done, we're not for sure what the government's going to make us do as the bank for the forgiveness, which I figure we'll probably get to here pretty quick.
Yeah, that's one thing I definitely want to cover real quick.
So when it comes down to it, we don't know what they're going to make us do. We don't know if they're going to make us be the ones to do the audit. I don't want to do the audit. I don't want any part of this. I don't want to come down and say, oh, by the way, Dr. Lynn, this percentage of your loan is not going to be forgiven. No, I want no part of that at all. But I can't, if we do, and if we do the loan and you take your money and take it to Wells Fargo, I can do zero audit on that anyway. So
it'll certainly be a lot more difficult to do the audit. So that's a couple of things. Number one, everybody needs to realize that the Paycheck Protection Program, like you said, it's actually protection for the payroll, and then 75% of it, and maximally 25% can be used for utilities and mortgages and interest and what is the rent? That's it. So you can't just squander it on other things, and there is auditing that needs to be done. So my question is, how do you have any guidance? I wrote down here, how are you going to audit, and how are you going to make sure that things were used appropriately? Obviously, we on my end, I'm going to keep track of spending, and we're going to have documentation, paperwork, and all that stuff as we do with any dealing with any sort of government entity. But how do you guys plan to? Because you're the arbiter, you're the ultimate arbiter of whether a particular amount is forgiven. It is not a grant; it is a forgivable loan. So how are you going to determine that?
We don't know yet. We
oh my God.
I guarantee there's this much guidance from the SBA and the Treasury of what the rules of forgiveness are going to be.
Based on how quickly they acted, it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, there's the truth. If you really think about it, when it's all said and done, I think there's a number of those loans that are out there that are, say, $25,000, $30,000. Is the SBA really going to look down on those? Probably not. Anything that's over, my guess is anything over 100, 150,000 is going to have a little more scrutiny to it, which as it should. But as far as me giving advice on it right now, I have none, because the only information I have is the exact sentences that you have read on the internet, on the SBA, of, as long as 75% of it goes towards payroll, the other 25%, okay. No. All I can say, keep track of who you paid, how much you paid them, what went to utilities, what went to back rent,
and also when you paid it, because
it has,
yeah, it's
time
sensitive.
From what I understand, over the next 8 weeks,
correct,
from when you're funded. So, which is fine, because the 8 weeks is technically based on the calculation of 12 months divided by 12, so that's your average, multiplied by 2.5. Well, if you multiplied it by 2, that's just your payroll for 8 weeks. The 0.5 is the cushion for mortgage, interest, rent, utilities,
and also raises. That could have happened last year relative to what you're paying this year.
Sure. It's actually, some of these have been interesting, with different questions that pop up with employers. They're using a payroll, and so some of these folks are places that pay off of a base, and then they might have a commission. And so someone that had a really good last 12 months on commission, that's their payroll. That's what it comes out as, a payroll. And so the place of business may be shut down for 4 to 6 weeks, and the owner of the business is saying, well, can I just pay them the base? Because my answer is, whatever their payroll was is what their payroll was. They're like, well, they haven't earned the commission. If it was me, if I was the owner, I'd pay it out. Just, you got the money, it's free money, pay it out to your employer, keep them, or your employees, keep them happy.
Because think about it, what is the alternative, right? What's the alternative? Correct. You have to give the money back, or you have to pay back a 1% loan over the next 2 years, as per the terms of the loan.
Yeah, and there's a lot of people out there that I've already had a couple phone calls that said, hey, we had these folks in the payroll, and now I just got a phone call that they went and found another job and they're not coming back. Now what do I do with that? I don't know. There's going to be so many questions here at the end of this next 2-month period of, okay, now what do we do? When is it forgiven? Because there's 6 months of deferred payment. The banks, we don't even know when we're supposed to get paid back by the SBA. I know how many dollars that we have out there, and it's a large amount.
Yeah.
And we're all sitting here going, boy, we sure hope we get paid off on these deals at some point, because the other part of that is we're servicing them. They get put into our system, and we have to now service these.
Yes, unless you sell off the loan to somebody else, like a lot of student loans and also home mortgages.
Yeah,
but
these aren't.
Let me try to wrap this up. First of all, Drew and I are not providing financial or legal advice. So first of all, let's cover that. And number two, for the definitive answer, I recommend everyone go to sba.gov or treasury.gov for the most up-to-date and final answer. And keep in mind, they are likely to change. The rules are likely to change.
They are. I hope they don't, because we kind of feel like we've kind of figured out where we're at now after that first go around, because that was a whirlwind. And hopefully everybody's a little more calm this time, and because it was a big mess.
Well, I think a lot of small businesses are still struggling when it comes to finances, and I think that panic leads to irrational behavior. And I hope now the government is thinking about a second tranche of $310 billion. Hopefully that'll allay some fears. But like you said, people need to start a relationship with a bank that will come through for them in an emergency like this. And I'm grateful for ADP, my office manager, and Unison Bank for being able to come through for me and for my practice. So keep the employees paid. Yeah. Any parting words?
As a customer. Say that again.
Any parting words? Any suggestions for the folks who are still waiting and in the queue, other than start a relationship banking? Start a relationship with a community bank, and number two, start the application process for the PPP ASAP.
Yes. Number one, I've been in banking now for going on 25 years. And my first 4 years out of college, I actually wanted, I didn't know for sure what I was doing. So I ended up working for Norwest up in Colorado, which got bought up by Wells Fargo. And so I spent about 4 or 5 months with Wells Fargo. And that's when I realized, hey, I don't really want to be with the big banks. I want to go. And so I ended up luckily in a small community bank back in Nebraska, where I'm from. And so the last 20 years I've spent in community banking. And what it does is it allows me to be a part of, like right now here in the area, I'm a part of a children's charity, sit on the advisory board. Back in Nebraska, I spent 5 years on a Chamber of Commerce board. And by doing so, you actually get to know your community. And so being here located in Gilbert and Chandler, this obviously used to be a large farm community, which essentially where I'm from, a farm community back in Nebraska. There's a lot of really, really good people here. There's a lot of good business owners here. And some of them that I'm hearing from right now on this second go around, they just felt like they weren't a part of the first one, and they, weren't allowed in because they weren't big enough and they thought they could make it, make this work. Well, obviously the government is not, letting the restrictions on the social distancing go away. And so a lot of those are still being closed. And so now they're coming and they're saying, hey, can you help me out? The good news is they're a lot more calm this time around, which is kind of nice because the money's not in there yet. So if they want to reach out to me, the best way to do it is by email. And I would assume you can get them my email. Anybody that's listening.
I will put it in the video description.
Okay, that's the easiest way to do it, so my phone's not ringing off the hook.
You bet.
So if I have that email, then I can shoot them the information directly. But yeah, once you actually get into a community bank and you have somebody that you know by name, and when you walk in that front door, and Bobby, she normally knows once she meets you a couple times, you walk in the door, you're not getting by Bobby without, hey, how you doing, yada yada. It's different than walking into Wells Fargo or Chase, where you go in, you do your transaction, you walk out. Most of the time, it takes you 15 minutes to get out of here when you could have been in and out in 3.
Yeah. Pre-COVID,
you talk.
Yeah, pre-COVID is like hugs all around and.
Yep. Yeah, and that's the best part about a community bank. So,
sounds good.
We have all the same products.
Yep, sounds good. And I already tagged Unison Bank Gilbert Branch in the video description, and I will put your contact or your email information, and also put Unison Bank the main phone number in the video description. So anybody who wants to reach out to you can. So I really appreciate the time, and good luck with the second tranche and the second round of applications.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and look forward to hearing from people. I might not end up handling their direct one. Because a couple other loan officers are here, but if whoever we hear from, we'll be in touch and see what we can get figured out.
You bet. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks.
All right, everyone. That is the end of my interview with Dru. I really appreciate all the work my office manager, ADP, and also Unison Bank helped us out tremendously when it comes to the processing of the application for Paycheck Protection Program. If you guys have any questions, please leave it in the comments below. For the definitive answer, like we said, treasury.gov and sba.gov. Best of luck to everyone. Stay safe. Bye-bye.